Hey, world history. Welcome to U5-L3, Mongols in the Ming Empire. Um, yeah, my camera isn't functioning right now. I don't know why. I don't understand Screencastify sometimes. But anyway, so you just won't see my face today, which is probably a good thing. That way you can just listen to my voice. Okay, so your job is you're going to watch this Ed puzzle, answer the questions. Questions I will ask you during the video today will be in blue text. Important concepts you should be writing in your study guide will be in red text. So make sure you follow along with your study guide. And if you have any questions, feel free to let your teacher know. They're here to help you. All right, so learning targets. Students can describe the development of civilizations in Eastern Asia, Mongol Empire, and Mongolia in China, and compare and contrast the cultures of China, like the Yuan, Mongol, and Ming cultures, in Japan, um, which we will talk about next time, is Japan. So we'll save that one for next time. All right, so Genghis Khan, also known as Genghis Khan, is one of the most famous historical figures. Have you heard of him? And if so, what do you know about him? If you haven't, you can just say, I haven't, or something like that. All right, so Genghis Khan was once the ruler of Mongolia and China. One of Genghis Khan's most famous quote is, if you want to retain your position, conquer your enemies, must make your subjects submit willingly and unite your diverse energies to a single end. From this quote, what kind of ruler do you think Genghis Khan was? All right, well, we're going to learn all about him today, so you're going to find out what kind of ruler he was. From here on out, I will just call him G Khan. You know, it's kind of like Alexander the Great. That's just too long to say. We've got to shorten up those names just a little bit. But before we talk about G-Con, we got we got to get an idea of what it was like to live in Mongolia in the late 1100s. So, Mongolia, that is in the northern part of China. Today's actually is also its own country. It is called Mongolia. I know, right? Great name. It's located on a steppe. A steppe is a flat and grassy landscape. You can see this here. There's a few mountains in the background, but you can see it's pretty much just flat grass. Not really anything else. There's a few trees in the background, a little bit of bushes, but it's just pretty much grass. Mongols who lived in Mongolia were pastoralists, and that means groups of people who traveled with each other. So they move their livestock around the steppe for fresh food sources like grasses. So they don't like farm and make food for the animals to eat. They travel around finding fresh like pastures for the animals to eat. So that's what makes them nomadic because they move around. They also live in yurts. Here is an example of a yurt here. And they are temporary structures, so they're tents that can be packed up and moved easily on horseback. Yes, horses. Remember, last time I said horses were super important to the Mongols. That's one of the main reasons. So they have no permanent structures. Every building was a yurt, so it was movable. There weren't any cities or towns. Um, and if they had a city or town, it's not like you would imagine it to be. So instead of having like, I don't know, like houses made out of bricks or mud or stones, they had a permanent wall going around the town, but all the buildings were yurts. So historians and archaeologists, the only like remains that they find of these towns are simply just like the walls that they build out of like stone or wood or something like that. But or else there's no evidence of like, yurts because They're made out of cloth and they decay really fast. Anyway, so people's lives revolved around moving their livestock. There's also no government structure. Before Genghis Khan, each group had their own hierarchy. They also had enslaved people to work for them, but only the wealthy and powerful groups had them. That wasn't a very common thing in Mongolia. Women. So women of high status and powerful groups could be used as marriage alliances with other Mongol groups, and marriage arrangements could occur as little as 8 years old. Ooh, that's creepy. So kind of like we talked about China the other day, women also don't have like any autonomy. All right, so religion. Most Mongols practice a mix of two or more religions. So it might be a mix between Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, or traditional shamanism. Traditional shamanism is for the Mongols is where they believe they could communicate with the supernatural world. Um, and the Khan or the leader believed to speak with the main god of the sky, who's kind of like their head deity. All right. So, Genghis Khan. It is actually a title. It is not his like name. His birth name was Temujin, and he had a really terrible upbringing. So he was born a noble child, but when he was quite young, his father got captured by an enemy tribe, and the enemies offered the father friendship and food, um, but what happened is that friendship and the food that they gave him was actually poisonous food. So the father of Genghis Khan died. So Genghis and his family fell into poverty, and he became enslaved and tied up to something called a cha to wander the Mongolian steppes alone. So this is a cha. This is more of a recent photos. This is from the 1870s in China. But by looking at this picture, what are some struggles a person with a cha would face? Well, the board is really too big, so the hands can't reach the face to eat or drink. Even if you have, a scratch on your nose, you can't scratch it because your hands can't reach your face. And they relied on passerbys to hand out food, and it could weigh up to 33 pounds, and you could not take it off. Okay, Genghis Khan had to wear this 24/7, try to survive the Mongolian steppes. But luckily for Genghis Khan, at 15 years old, he was rescued by a group called the Karaites. There, he learned to respect all religions. He also learned a lot of military tactics, necessities of dealing harshly with enemies, culture of Inner Asia, and how to run an economy. So in 1206, the Karaites and allies became one group called the Mongols. Okay, so they kind of formed together, some through allianceship, others through war. And the Mongols appointed Genghis Khan as leader. So the word Khan actually means leader. So again, it's a title, not his actual name, but we'll just refer to him as Genghis Khan because that's what most people know him by. So the long story short about this is by 1215, the Mongols, led by Genghis Khan, captured China's capital, Yangjing, which today is called Beijing. And by 1221, the Mongols captured the land stretching from eastern China all the way to Iran and the Caspian Sea. So think of that, all the way from the edge of China to the Pacific Ocean, as you can see here on the map, all the way over here to Iran. Crazy. That's a huge empire. Yeah. All right. So, Western and Asian history books like to make Genghis Khan look like a villain. So I will not shy away from the fact that he was cruel. He killed countless people. He also did a lot of sexual assaults on many women. So yeah, he was a villain. Um, but he also had a few beneficial policies that he made as well. So Genghis Khan encouraged Mongols to go into the trading business or be merchants. So, Mongols were really good candidates to be traveling merchants because they're familiar with the harsh terrains and steppes and deserts. The Mongols also had the equipment and lifestyle to move, right? We talked about yurts. They can just pack up, put it on their horse, and move on. And Genghis Khan also welcomed Europeans to trade with the Mongols. So beforehand, China was a little bit like, should we trade with the Europeans? I'm not sure. But Genghis Khan's like, yeah, bring on the Europeans. Let's trade with them. Mongols also created their own passport. Yeah, like you think of when you have to travel internationally, you need like a United States passport. The Mongols had something like that too. It's called the paisa in Chinese. And in order to keep track of merchants uh, who was allowed into the Mongol Empire and to help with language barriers as well. Uh, so you could show like your badge to someone and they'd be like, oh, you speak blah language. Let me point you to someone who knows that language too. So it's kind of a cool invention. Genghis Khan's successful policies on trade leads to something called Pax Mongolica. And what Pax Mongolica is, it literally translates to Mongolian peace, meaning that there was free trade among the entire empire without borders and taxes. So pretty much it was a merchant's dream. All right, there's some other really interesting laws that Genghis Khan made. So they are called the Yasa. The first law was no more bride stealing. And the reason why Genghis Khan wanted this law to be put in place is because his mom was stolen by his dad from another man. So he saw that and was like, "Yeah, no, let's stop that. My mom suffered through that." And another thing that Genghis Khan did was to have no more enslavement of Mongols, since he himself was enslaved as a boy. Now, the Mongols could enslave non-Mongols, um, but they couldn't enslave, like Mongols couldn't enslave another. So enslavement was not abolished, it was just restricted. Three, all kids were legitimate to their dad, whether born from his wife or concubine. Four, no more livestock theft. Five, all religions were welcome, and there was no tax on temples or clergy. So that really, really spread or helped spread many different kinds of religions around China and the Mongolian Empire. So, how did the Mongols defeat such large areas of land? So, just to kind of put it in perspective again, right? We're here all the way from the Pacific Ocean up here into Siberia, all the way over here through where like modern day Moscow, Russia would be, kind of touching Poland a little bit, down here through the Middle East. I mean, this is a huge, huge empire. How did it happen? And that answer is horses. I told you that horses were important to the Mongols. Yes, so horses were the main weapon of the Mongols. Horses could be used for riding, they could pull stuff, you could, well, eat them. They're also used in warfare and glue. Yes, that's right, glue. Lovely glue. I don't know if like modern day glue is still made out of horses, but like if you ever like rummage through like your grandparents' closet or something like that and you find like a really old bottle of glue, it's probably made out of horse. And Mongols perfected the use of the saddle and stirrup, just like we talked about last time. All right, one of the other really big inventions was called the compound bow. And this was invented by the Mongols. Here's a picture of it here. So it was made out of wood, animal bones, and glue from horses, of course. Don't eat the glue, by the way. Um, and it can shoot arrows accurately from 200 to 400 yards. That's insane. And also, it was really easy to reload, so an archer could send an arrow every 8 seconds, and it was really easy to shoot it off a horseback. Well, I mean, with the proper training, it was easy. But other bows of the time were as tall as the archer, but this and took time to load, fire, and were not as accurate. But this is really unique because if you look at the bow itself, do you see how it has like the normal kind of like backward C shape? And then it kind of curves right here at the end. It curves the other way. on both the ends. That was really unique to the compound bow, and that allowed it to be smaller, but even more accurate. All right, so secrets to Mongolian success. The first reason why the Mongols were so successful was discipline. All of Genghis Khan's advisors and military were trained with the utmost authority. There were no room for error. If you messed up, you were killed. Two, organization. Politically and economically, Genghis Khan had a tight control um, of how he wanted his empire to be run. And also, terror. If you disobey, you would be punished, but more than likely, you'd just be straight up killed. Four, extermination of the elites. So, when Genghis Khan conquered an enemy group, he would kill all the aristocrats in the enemy group, so there would be no threat of revolt. So, when he conquered another enemy group, um, he would just take in like the normal peasant people, um, because they didn't have anyone higher up to make them like form together to like spark a rebellion. So that was a really, really strategic on Genghis Khan's part. Five would be appropriation, so that's where he allowed all different religions and cultures. Six would be tolerance. That was, again, kind of allowing religions and cultures that he didn't necessarily agree with, but he welcomed them into the empire. And seven, of course, is free trade. There weren't any taxes. All right, now we're going to talk about Kublai Khan. So he is the grandson of Genghis Khan. Um, so after Kublai Khan's dad died, okay, so that would have been Genghis Khan's son, he took over the region of China of the Mongolian Empire. And he started a new dynasty in China called the Yuan dynasty. And he ruled the Yuan dynasty from 1265 to 1294. He also had this real big ambition of invading Japan in 1281. And he ordered his army to sail across the sea from China to Japan. Japan was preparing to fight, but knew they were not, they were totally going to lose. Um, then, miraculously, this big typhoon, which here in the United States we just call it a hurricane, prevented the Mongols from coming to Japan's shore. And so the Japanese called this a kamikaze or divine wind because they believed the gods were saving them from the Mongols by making this huge hurricane to pretty much sink their boats. This is also a term used in World War II, but we're not there yet. That's our last unit that we cover is World War II. All right, so the downfall of the Mongols. So here's kind of the short story of it. So Genghis Khan died in 1227. He had four sons who succeeded his territory. Those four sons had a total of five grandsons, which led to even more splitting in the empire. And the Mongol Empire just split up too much. It wasn't unified, and by 1368, it ended. So it ended because there's too much splitting up of the empire. Wait, Miss Corey, what about the Marco Polo vocab word that you have on the U5-L1 study guide? Well, duh, it's a game that kids play in the pool, right? You know, Marco Polo. Oh God, I hated that game. That was like the worst game ever. But there's actually an importance to Marco Polo. He was a real person. It is not just a game that you play in the pool. So he lived from 1254 to 1324. He was from Italy. He traveled the Silk Road and the Mongol Empire. We'll talk about the Silk Road in another Ed puzzle fairly shortly. He wrote a book about his travels and it became a bestseller in Europe. Another really cool fun fact when Christopher Columbus sailed to the Americas, he had Marco Polo's book on his ship. Wow, crazy. All right, and on this map too, it gives a really good illustration of the route that Marco Polo made. So you can see he started here in like Syria, and he went all the way through some really rough terrains and the steeps of Mongolia, up here to the capital of Beijing, back down, went around of like modern day Vietnam, went around through India, back up and back to Italy. All right, so wrap up. Today we learned about what it was like living in Mongolia, Genghis Khan, and how the Mongols successfully conquered a lot of Asia, how Genghis Khan was so successful, and Marco Polo is more than just a pool game. All right, next up, you're going to do U5-L4, the Silk Road Ed Puzzle. It is a crash course video. I don't typically do crash course videos, um, but this one just explains the Silk Road better and more entertaining than I ever could. I know he talks a little fast, so let me know if you have any questions about it. After that, you're going to do U5-L5, which is ancient Japan, Heian, and shogunates Ed puzzle. So that's me doing a puzzle talking about Japan. If you have questions, please email your teacher. If you want to learn more, you can email me. My office hours are Monday from 12 to 1. Mrs. Hinkle's are Wednesdays from 2 to 3. And if you're in my class, do the weekly check-in. I like to read your answers. All right, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Bye.